What if the sky you see above you is not the limit, but an invitation? What if the stars, those tiny flickers of light, were not distant strangers, but open doors waiting for us to step through? Once, Earth was home. It fed us, it nurtured us, and it gave us everything. But what happens when that home begins to crumble, when the very soil turns against you, and the air you breathe becomes poison? This is the story of a world on the edge of collapse, and of one man who dared to leave it all behind. It is the story of a father torn between the love for his daughter and the call of the universe. It is a story of sacrifice, of impossible choices, of black holes and wormholes, of hope buried in equations and love stretching across time itself. When humanity's survival hung by a thread, the answer did not lie beneath our feet. It lay among the stars. And so began the greatest journey ever taken, a journey beyond Earth, beyond time, beyond imagination. The Earth was not always silent. Once, it had been alive with the hum of cities, the laughter of children, and the music of the wind moving through golden fields of wheat. But that was before the blight, before the sky turned into a ceiling of dust and the soil forgot how to grow. Before humanity was forced to look at the stars not with wonder, but with desperation that it was in this dying world that Ethan Cole lived. Once a pilot, now reduced to a farmer like millions of others, Ethan worked the land that betrayed him day after day. His hands were rough from soil that refused to yield, his lungs weary from the dust that invaded every breath. He was a man built for the sky, yet shackled to the ground, a hawk forced to crawl. But Ethan's greatest struggle was not with the failing earth. It was with the quiet grief of raising his daughter, Lena, in a world that offered her no future. Lena was only 10, but her eyes carried the weight of a much older soul. She was curious, endlessly so. She filled notebooks with strange drawings, circles, spirals, patterns that seemed meaningless to most. But Ethan had learned never to dismiss her. Her mind seemed tuned to something beyond ordinary understanding. "Dad," she would ask, pointing at the night sky through her small telescope, "what if there are people looking back at us right now?" Ethan would smile, ruffling her hair. "Then I hope they see you, kid, because you're the best thing we've got." But when Lena wasn't listening, his smile would fade, because he knew the truth. Her world was collapsing. Every year, crops failed faster, sandstorms lasted longer, and humanity shrank into survival mode. Teachers no longer spoke of progress or future careers. They spoke of endurance, of learning how to grow corn in poisoned soil, how to live in scarcity. It broke Ethan's heart to think that Lena's childhood was being stolen by survival. The farmhouse they lived in was old, battered by storms, but it held memories. Lena often claimed there was something strange in her room. Books falling by themselves, chalk dust moving as if unseen hands wrote on the walls. Ethan brushed it off as imagination, but sometimes in the stillness of night, he too felt something, a presence, a whisper. One evening, Lena brought him a notebook filled with numbers and shapes. "I didn't write these," she said, her small voice trembling. "They just came." Ethan frowned, confused. The patterns made no sense to him. But part of him wondered if there was meaning buried within. Still, he reassured her gently. "Sometimes our minds play tricks, sweetheart. Don't be scared." But the unease lingered. Something, or someone, seemed to be reaching out through the fabric of their collapsing world. Life outside the farm was no better. Towns had shrunk into husks of their former selves. Dust storms swallowed roads, houses, entire communities. Crops that once fed millions now withered in weeks. Hunger gnawed at families, and governments had reduced to shadows of power, clinging to scraps of authority. The people called it the Great Decline. Scientists explained it as a planet-wide blight, a disease of crops that no pesticide could fight. But Ethan knew it was more than that. The earth itself was giving up, as though tired of bearing humanity's weight. Rumors spread about a secret group of scientists working on solutions beyond Earth, but most dismissed it as fantasy. For the ordinary people, survival was all that mattered. Yet fate had other plans for Ethan. One night, After following a strange series of coordinates hidden within Lena's mysterious ghost patterns, Ethan stumbled upon something that should not have existed. A hidden facility buried beneath the desert, disguised from the world above. Steel doors opened, scanners whirred, and suddenly Ethan found himself standing before a team of scientists working with machines far beyond what the dying surface world knew. At their center stood Professor Aldenbrandt, a man whose mind had once reshaped theories of physics, but who had long vanished from public eye. Now Ethan understood why. Brandt studied him with piercing eyes. "You weren't supposed to find this place. But perhaps you were meant to." Ethan looked around in disbelief. "What is this hope?" Brandt replied. "The last hope humanity has left." Brandt explained what few had dared whisper. Earth was finished. Survival on this planet was a countdown, and the timer was almost up. Their only chance was beyond the stars. For years, this hidden program, called Project Ardent, had worked in silence, studying wormholes, distant planets, and the possibility of building a new home among the stars. But they needed pilots. Not just scientists who could calculate, but explorers who could fly into the unknown. And Ethan, a pilot grounded by circumstance, suddenly found himself the unlikely candidate that Ethan's mind swirled. Adventure was in his blood, but how could he leave Lena? She was his reason for everything. The thought of walking away, of letting her grow up without him, was unbearable. And yet, what future did she have here? A world of dust, hunger, and despair? If he went, maybe, just maybe, he could secure a future worth living for her. Brandt's words cut through his hesitation. Sometimes, to save the ones we love, we must step into the dark. That night, Ethan sat beside Lena's bed, watching her sleep. Her small hand clutched the locket her late mother had given her. She looked peaceful, untouched by the weight of the world. That he wanted to tell her everything. That he had found a way to save her. That he was going to fly again. That he might not return. But how could he burden a child with such knowledge? Instead, he whispered softly, "I'll always be with you, no matter what. You just have to believe." Outside, the dust storm raged, rattling the windows, shaking the old walls. Inside, father and daughter shared a fragile silence, unaware that destiny was already pulling them toward the stars. And so the stage was set. A dying Earth, a father torn by love, a child haunted by patterns of the unknown, and a secret program that dared to reach for salvation among the stars. Ethan Cole had a choice: remain a prisoner of a crumbling planet or risk everything for a chance to secure a future. The world had grown too small for hope. But somewhere beyond the veil of the sky, hope waited. All it needed was someone brave enough to chase it. The desert winds howled outside the hidden facility, but beneath the ground, the air was alive with quiet urgency. For Ethan Cole, the discovery of Project Ardent was like stepping into another world. While the surface of Earth gasped its last breaths, here humanity's brightest minds had carved a sanctuary of machines, theories, and fragile hope. Massive screens glowed with images of galaxies. Engineers in white suits moved like shadows among strange instruments. And at the center of it all stood the impossible, a shimmering diagram of a wormhole suspended in the void between Saturn and infinite darkness. Ethan stared at it in awe. "That's not real. It's as real as the dust you cough every morning," Professor Aldenbrandt replied. His voice carried the weight of years spent wrestling with the universe's deepest questions. A doorway placed near Saturn, perhaps by intelligence we cannot yet comprehend. Through it, 12 worlds wait. One of them may be home. Ethan's throat tightened. He wasn't a scientist. He wasn't supposed to be standing here. Yet something deep inside whispered that his entire life had been leading to this. It wasn't long before Ethan met the others chosen for the mission. Each of them bore the same haunted look, a mixture of brilliance and quiet desperation. Dr. Iris Navarro, a biologist whose calm voice carried both authority and empathy. She believed life could adapt anywhere, even among the stars. Commander Julian Rake, a soldier turned astronaut, his presence sharp as steel, his words clipped. He had lost his family in the famines and carried the mission like a shield against grief. Dr. Soren Hale, a physicist obsessed with black holes and relativity. His hands shook when he wasn't talking, but when he explained time dilation, he spoke like a man holding secrets of gods. And lastly, Ethan Cole, a farmer with dust in his lungs and a pilot soul that still burned. The outsider among geniuses. At first, Ethan felt like a ghost in their world. Equations meant nothing to him. Calculations blurred like foreign languages. Yet when they spoke of navigation, of piloting through chaos, their eyes turned to him. He realized he wasn't there to understand the science. He was there to make sure the ship survived it. For weeks, Ethan endured relentless training. Simulators hurled him into the vacuum of space, where alarms screamed and engines failed. He learned the feel of thrusters under his fingertips, the subtle tug of inertia, the razor-thin line between control and chaos. At night, exhaustion would pull him under, but his dreams always returned to Lena, her small voice, her drawings, her belief in something beyond. He carried her in his heart like oxygen, every breath reminding him why he endured point one evening. Iris Navarro sat beside him in the mess hall. "You're quiet, Ethan," she said softly, "just thinking about home." She studied him, her eyes heavy with unspoken understanding. "We all are. But remember this, we're not leaving home behind. We're carrying it with us, hoping to plant it somewhere new." Her words sank deep. For the first time, Ethan felt less like a deserter and more like a guardian of something precious. The day came when training ended and destiny began. The crew stood at the foot of their vessel, the Dauntless. She was a leviathan of steel, her body built to endure the fire of launch and the silence of space. As Ethan walked the ramp, his legs trembled, not from fear, but from the sheer weight of history pressing on his shoulders. Humanity's survival sat inside this machine, and he was about to fly it into the unknown. The countdown echoed in his ears. Engines roared, the ground shook, and the Dauntless ripped free of Earth's gravity. Ethan's chest tightened as blue skies turned black, as clouds became specks, as the fragile curve of Earth shrank beneath them. For a moment, silence claimed. The cabin. The crew exchanged glances, breathless. They had done it. They had left behind the dying Earth. But Ethan's gaze lingered on the shrinking blue orb. Somewhere down there, Lena slept in their farmhouse, unaware her father was already gone. Days bled into weeks as the Dauntless sailed through the void. Outside, stars glimmered like cold diamonds. Inside, time became a rhythm of reports, maintenance, and long silences. Ethan found comfort in the ship's window. Sometimes he imagined Lena sitting beside him, her small fingers pointing at constellations. He whispered stories to the stars, as though she could hear them across the gulf. When Saturn finally came into view, the crew fell in a stunned silence. Its golden rings stretched across the black canvas, majestic and infinite. But even Saturn paled against the anomaly waiting nearby. It hung like a sphere of shifting liquid, its surface bending light, swallowing stars, spitting them back distorted. It was not simply a hole in space. It was a mystery alive with silent power. Dr. Soren's voice trembled. That's our path. A tunnel through higher dimensions, compressed into a sphere we can cross. Ethan swallowed hard. The pilot in him longed to turn back. The father in him whispered the same. But the man in him, the man who had promised his daughter a future, tightened his grip on the controls that we go through, he said quietly. As the Dauntless approached, space itself seemed to ripple. Gravity pulled in strange directions. Light bent around them. Ethan felt his body tugged and stretched, his senses unraveling. The crew shouted coordinates, numbers, theories. But to Ethan, it all became instinct. Hands on the controls, heart pounding. He guided the ship into the impossible. The moment they crossed, the universe folded. Time and space twisted into an ocean of colors beyond imagination. Voices echoed like whispers from eternity. Ethan glimpsed flashes, stars being born, galaxies colliding, shadows of worlds unseen. For an instant, he thought he heard Lena's voice, faint and distant, calling his name. And then, silence, the Dauntless emerged into another galaxy. A new sky stretched before them, filled with suns they had never known, planets waiting in silence, and possibilities as vast as infinity itself. The crew stared at the new heavens. 12 worlds lay scattered across this system, each a question, each a chance. Commander Rake exhaled, his voice steady for the first time. We made it. But Ethan only whispered to himself, eyes wet, heart aching. Lena, we're one step closer. The Earth was behind them. Ahead stretched the unknown, a new galaxy shimmering with both promise and peril. Humanity's last hope now rested on the shoulders of a farmer-turned-pilot, a crew of dreamers, and a ship daring enough to pierce eternity. For Ethan, the journey was no longer about survival alone. It was about a promise whispered to his daughter, that love could cross stars, that hope could survive even the death of worlds. And so, the Dauntless sailed forward toward the trials that awaited among the stars. The Dauntless floated in the silence of an alien galaxy, its silver body a fragile thread of human hope against the endless darkness. For the first time in human history, people had crossed a threshold once thought impossible. But survival was not in the crossing, it was in the finding. 12 planets, 12 possibilities, 12 doors to either salvation or despair. For Ethan Cole, each one felt like a gamble where the stakes were not only his life, but the future of his daughter back on Earth. Every decision now carried the weight of generations. The first candidate planet shimmered blue from orbit, a jewel wrapped in clouds. Scans showed it was covered in water, with shallow oceans stretching to the horizon. The crew descended with cautious hope, their vessel cutting through thick atmosphere before landing on a metal platform left by earlier probes. When the hatch opened, Ethan stepped into ankle-deep water. The horizon was endless, a mirror reflecting the sky. For a moment, it felt peaceful, but Iris Navarro frowned at her instruments. The gravity here is higher than expected, she murmured. In time, her voice trailed off. Doctor. Soren Hale's eyes widened. Relativity. This planet is caught in the pull of a massive black hole nearby. Time here runs differently. Every hour we spend could mean years back on Earth. The word struck Ethan like a blade. Years? Lena's childhood slipping by in the time it took him to breathe. He wanted to run back into the ship, but duty held him in place. Then the calm sea shifted. Waves rose, towering walls of water, stretching hundreds of feet high, rolling toward them like liquid mountains. Get to the ship. Rake shouted. The crew sprinted, water dragging at their legs, the thunder of the wave deafening. Ethan hauled Iris up the ramp, lungs burning, heart pounding. The Dauntless roared to life, engines fighting against the pull of the ocean as the wall of water crashed behind them. They escaped, but not unscathed. Equipment was lost. Time was lost. Hours spent on the surface had stolen years from the world they had left behind. Ethan sat in silence afterward, staring at his hands. She'll be older, he whispered. No one needed to ask who the next destination was. A world cloaked in ice, its surface glittering like diamonds under a pale sun. The Dauntless landed on a ridge, the air sharp and biting, the silence suffocating. At first glance, the planet seemed dead. Ice stretched endlessly, cracked only by jagged mountains. But Iris insisted on exploration. If life exists, it will be under the ice. They drilled, sent probes, searched for signs of liquid water. Hours turned into days, and hope thinned like the air. Then came a storm, winds sharper than blades, temperatures dropping so fast their instruments froze solid. Sheltering inside the Dauntless, Ethan listened to the howling winds and thought of Lena's small hands drawing circles in her notebooks. Was she still drawing them? Or had the years they'd lost already turned her into a stranger? The storm raged for days before they gave up. This world offered nothing but silence. Exhaustion weighed heavy on the crew when they approached the third candidate. From orbit, it was breathtaking. Lush green continents, rivers winding like silver veins, clouds drifting above golden plains. It looked like Earth reborn. Excitement filled the cabin as they landed. Warm air greeted them, carrying the scent of vegetation. Ethan closed his eyes, and for a heartbeat, it felt like standing in the fields of his old farm before the blight. But beauty was deceitful. The first sign came with the insects, small, shimmering creatures that hummed through the air, their wings leaving trails of light. They seemed harmless, even beautiful, until one landed on Rake's arm. His skin blistered instantly, pain twisting his face. Within hours, they discovered the truth. The entire ecosystem, though vibrant, was hostile. Plants released toxins. Rivers carried microscopic predators. Even the air, though breathable, carried spores that gnawed at their lungs. "This planet doesn't want us here," Iris whispered, her face pale. Reluctantly, they lifted off once more. Failure after failure gnawed at the crew. Supplies dwindled. Arguments flared. Commander Rake grew harsher, demanding quick decisions, while Dr. Soren became lost in equations, his mind spiraling into obsession. Even Iris, the most hopeful among them, began to doubt. And Ethan carried a heavier burden than all. Each wasted day felt like betrayal. His daughter's face haunted him, her voice echoing in the silence. How many years had slipped by? 10? 20? Would she even remember him if he returned? One night, he dreamed of her standing in their farmhouse doorway. Older now, her eyes filled with quiet anger. "You left me," she said. "You promised, but you left me." He woke with tears on his face, the silence of space pressing down like a tomb. It was during this time of despair that something strange happened. While analyzing data from the failed worlds, Lena's familiar patterns appeared. Circles, spirals, numbers. They weren't random. They were signals buried in the universe itself. Ethan froze when he saw them. "That's her," he whispered. "It has to be." The crew dismissed it as coincidence, the mind of a desperate man seeing ghosts in the data. But Ethan knew. Somehow, across time and space, his daughter was reaching out. And it meant one thing. The mission was not just about finding a home. It was about understanding the connection between love, time, and survival. With supplies running low and spirits breaking, the crew made a decision. One final world. One last chance before turning back. The Dauntless changed course, engines humming, hearts heavy. Ethan sat at the controls, his hands steady, but his soul trembling, that he whispered to himself, to Lena, to the universe. Just one more. Let this one be that the first 3 worlds had tested them. Through oceans that stole time, ice that offered only silence, and beauty that hid death. Each trial carved away their hope, leaving them raw, fragile, and desperate. Yet even in despair, a spark remained. The mysterious patterns that linked Ethan to his daughter, the whisper of something greater than chance guiding their path. The Dauntless sailed on, carrying the last flicker of human hope toward the unknown. The next world could be their salvation or their end. The Dauntless was running on borrowed time. Fuel cells hummed faintly, rations had been halved, and every face aboard was etched with fatigue. Hope, once bright, now flickered like a candle in the wind. But destiny is never gentle. It calls us into storms when we least have the strength to face them. And for Ethan Cole, that storm was waiting on the 4th world. The planet loomed ahead, massive, shrouded in swirling clouds of violet and gold. From orbit, it looked almost alive, its storms twisting in patterns that defied natural order. Instruments detected energy readings unlike anything the crew had seen before. "This place," Iris whispered, staring at the monitor. "It shouldn't exist like this." Dr. Soren Hale, his eyes bloodshot from sleepless nights, leaned forward. "If there's power here, there could be warmth, resources, maybe even life." Ray grunted. "Or maybe it'll kill us like the others. We're running out of choices." Then kept silent, his gaze fixed on the storming planet. Something in his chest pulled him toward it. An intuition, or perhaps something deeper. He thought of Lena's drawings, the spirals, the circles. They looked like the very storms that churn below. "Take us down," he said quietly. The descent was violent. The Dauntless shook under the assault of turbulent winds, lightning crackling like spears across the sky. Ethan's hands gripped the controls, knuckles white, every nerve alive with tension. Clouds swallowed them whole, plunging the ship into darkness lit only by brief flashes of violet light. The storm roared like a living beast, each gust threatening to tear them apart. Stabilizers failing. Iris shouted, "Hold her steady." Rake barked, but Ethan's mind was elsewhere. In the chaos, he heard something, a whisper, not from the comms, not from the crew, but inside his very soul. A voice, faint, familiar. "Dad." His heart slammed against his chest. "Lena," he breathed. Then came silence. They broke through the storm and landed in a basin surrounded by jagged cliffs. The air shimmered strangely, heavy and distorted, as tough reality itself bent and twisted. Instruments went haywire, readings spiking and collapsing with no pattern. The ground beneath their boots pulsed faintly, almost like a heartbeat. This isn't just geology. What if the sky you see above you is not the limit, but an invitation? What if the stars, those tiny flickers of light, were not distant strangers, but open doors waiting for us to step through? Once, Earth was home. It fed us, it nurtured us, and it gave us everything. But what happens when that home begins to crumble, when the very soil turns against you, and the air you breathe becomes poison? This is the story of a world on the edge of collapse, and of one man who dared to leave it all behind. It is the story of a father torn between the love for his daughter and the call of the universe. It is a story of sacrifice, of impossible choices, of black holes and wormholes, of hope buried in equations and love stretching across time itself. When humanity's survival hung by a thread, the answer did not lie beneath our feet. It lay among the stars. And so began the greatest journey ever taken, a journey beyond Earth, beyond time, beyond imagination. The Earth was not always silent. Once, it had been alive with the hum of cities, the laughter of children, and the music of the wind moving through golden fields of wheat. But that was before the blight, before the sky turned into a ceiling of dust and the soil forgot how to grow. Before humanity was forced to look at the stars not with wonder, but with desperation that it was in this dying world that Ethan Cole lived. Once a pilot, now reduced to a farmer like millions of others. Ethan worked the land that betrayed him day after day. His hands were rough from soil that refused to yield, his lungs weary from the dust that invaded every breath. He was a man built for the sky, yet shackled to the ground, a hawk forced to crawl. But Ethan's greatest struggle was not with the failing Earth. It was with the quiet grief of raising his daughter, Lena, in a world that offered her no future. Iris murmured, "The planet itself, it feels alive." Ethan knelt, touching the soil. It was warm, thrumming faintly, like veins carrying unseen energy. He felt it travel through his fingers, up his arm, into his chest. For a moment, he swore he heard Lena's laugh, the echo of her childhood, dancing on the air. He staggered back, shaken. While exploring a canyon nearby, they discovered something extraordinary, a rift in the fabric of space itself. Not just a cave, not just a void, but a tear, light bending unnaturally, sound warping, time itself stuttering. Dr. Soren was ecstatic. "This is it. This is what we've been searching for. A bridge, a link to something beyond. If we can harness it, we can find humanity's new home." But Ethan was uneasy. He stared into the rift, and it stared back. He felt it pulling at him, not just his body, but his memories, his love, his very essence. He saw flashes. Lena as a child, Lena as a woman grown, Lena crying in an empty room, waiting for him. "Whatever this is," Ethan said, his voice low, "it's not meant to be tampered with." Rake scoffed. "We don't have a luxury to be scared, Cole. This is survival." The crew fractured under the weight of desperation. Dr. Soren insisted they study the rift, arguing it could bend time, give them control over years lost. Rake sided with him, desperate for results. Iris hesitated, torn between science and instinct. Ethan refused. "We don't understand it. Messing with this, it could destroy us." The argument exploded. Voices rose. Hands slammed against consoles. In the end, Rake made his move, seizing command, locking Ethan out of the controls. "We're going in," Rake declared. "If you won't help us, stay out of the way." Ethan's fists clenched, fury and fear twisting inside him. He thought of Lena again, her eyes, her trust. He couldn't let this crew gamble with forces they didn't understand. The descent into the rift. Against Ethan's warnings, they activated the equipment. The rift opened wider, light spilling out like liquid fire. The Dauntless trembled as gravity bent, alarms shrieking, the very air thick with distortion. One by one, the crew felt it, time slipping. Their watches spun wildly, seconds stretching into minutes, minutes collapsing into heartbeats. Iris screamed as her voice echoed back in layers, distorted across timelines. Ethan fought to shut it down, muscles straining as he forced control back from Rake. In the chaos, he caught another voice, clearer this time. "Dad, don't be afraid." Lena, older, stronger, reaching across the gulf of time itself. The rift pulsed brighter, threatening to consume the ship. Ethan made his choice. He slammed the override, tearing the systems offline. With a thunderous crack, the rift collapsed, leaving only silence. The Dauntless fell still. Smoke hissed from the consoles. The crew lay exhausted, shaken, broken. Rake glared at Ethan, fury burning in his eyes. "You doomed us. That rift was our chance." "No," Ethan said firmly, his chest heaving. "That rift wasn't salvation. It was a grave." But inside, he was trembling. Because deep down, he knew the truth. Lena had been there. Somehow, impossibly, she had reached across the void. And if she could reach him, then maybe there was still hope. The crew retreated, battered and divided. Supplies were nearly gone. The Dauntless drifted in orbit, its engines quiet, its hulls heavy with despair. No one spoke of the rift. No one spoke of hope. Ethan sat alone in the cockpit, staring at the stars. He thought of Earth, of the dust storms, of Lena's fragile smile. He thought of the promise he had whispered by her bedside, "I'll always be with you." Tears blurred his vision. For the first time, he doubted himself completely. Maybe Rake was right. Maybe hope was gone. Maybe he had doomed not just the crew, but his daughter too. And yet, in the silence, he felt it again. A whisper, a presence. Not words this time, just warmth. As if Lena's love had crossed the void, wrapping him in light. And for the first time since leaving Earth, Ethan let himself believe. The storm planet had tested them in ways no other world could. It had fractured their unity, shattered their faith, and forced them to look into the heart of darkness itself. But even in that abyss, Ethan Cole had found something unbreakable, the bond between a father and his daughter. A bond that could outlast time, space, and even death itself. The journey was not over. The final trial waited. But Ethan now understood this was never just about finding a planet. It was about finding a way to keep love alive when the universe itself tried to tear it apart. The Dauntless drifted silently, like a wounded bird suspended in the endless dark. Its engines barely hummed, its crew weary shadows of the explorers they once were. Every choice they had made, every world they had touched, had led them to this moment, standing at the edge of the unknown, staring into the abyss of the cosmos. And at the center of that abyss lay their final chance, a black hole so immense it warped the very stars around it. It was a monster of gravity, swallowing light, devouring time itself. For some, it was death incarnate. For Ethan Cole, it was destiny. The crew gathered in the dim light of the control chamber. Rake's jaw was tight, his fists clenched as he slammed a hand against the console. "This is madness," he growled. "Flying into that thing is suicide." Dr. Soren Hale shook his head, desperation clouding his normally sharp eyes. "It's not suicide, it's the only way. The data from the rift, the anomalies we've seen, it all points to this. The black hole isn't just destruction. It's a gateway. Gateway to what?" Rake spat. "Oblivion?" Iris looked at Ethan, her voice quiet, trembling with both fear and awe. Or maybe to her. The room fell silent. Everyone knew who she meant. Lena. Ethan stood tall, though his heart weighed heavy. He had carried his daughter's voice across light years, across storms and silence, across despair itself. And now, standing on the precipice, he knew what he had to do. "I'll go," he said firmly. "The Dauntless can't survive entry, but a pod might. Send me through. If there's a chance to find answers to give Lena and humanity a future, then I'll take it." Rake stared at him in disbelief. "You'll never make it out." "Maybe not," Ethan admitted. "But maybe that's not the point." Preparing the pod felt like preparing a coffin. Every system was stripped to its essentials: shielding, propulsion, life support calibrated for a single passenger. The rest was silence. Iris helped him secure the final seals, her hands trembling as they brushed his. Her eyes searched his face, as though trying to memorize every detail. "You don't have to do this," she whispered. Ethan smiled faintly. "Yes, I do. I made her a promise." "And what about us?" Iris asked, her voice breaking. He looked at her, and for a moment, the weight of it all almost crushed him. But then he placed a hand over hers. "You keep them alive. That's how you'll keep me alive, too." Dr. Soren approached, his face grave. "If you survive the descent, if you find whatever lies beyond, record it. Leave a trail. Humanity will need it." Ethan nodded. Then he turned to Rake. For the first time since the mutiny, their eyes met without hatred. "Watch over them," Ethan said simply. Rake gave a stiff nod. "You're a fool, Cole. But maybe you're the fool we needed." The pod detached, drifting away from the Dauntless. Ethan sat alone, hands steady on the controls, as the monstrous black hole filled his view. Its event horizon pulsed like a living wound in space, its pull irresistible. Alarms blared as the pod accelerated. Time stretched, light warped, stars bent around him into impossible arcs. The very fabric of reality groaned as he crossed the threshold. Gravity crushed against him, pulling at his body, tearing at the pod. His vision blurred, pain searing through his chest. And then, just as he thought it would tear him apart completely, everything changed. He was no longer falling. Instead, he floated inside a vast construct of light and shadow. It stretched infinitely in every direction, an endless lattice of glowing threads, like the inside of a cosmic library. Each strand pulsed with memory, with possibility, with echoes of lives lived and yet to be that Ethan's breath caught. This was no death. This was something else. And then he heard it. "Dad!" The voice was clear. "Pure." Not an echo, not a hallucination. Lena, that he turned, tears burning his eyes. And there she was, not a child, not fully grown, but existing in every age at once. Her face shifted through time like pages turning, yet her eyes remained constant, filled with love. "Lena," his voice cracked. "Al, how are you here?" "I've always been here," she said softly. "You just had to find me." He reached for her, but his hand met only light. Yet somehow, the bond was stronger than touch. Ethan's mind reeled as he pieced it together. This place, the Tesseract, the construct, wasn't just inside the black hole. It was beyond space and time itself. A bridge, a message, a gift. "You're the connection," Lena said, her voice like music. "Love brought you here. Love kept you alive. And love is what will guide them." Ethan felt the truth wash over him. This was why he had come. Not just to find a planet, not just to save humanity, but to deliver a message that would outlast him, outlast time itself. "Tell them," Lena whispered. "Tell them we are not alone. Tell them to keep reaching for the stars." He closed his eyes, tears falling freely. "I will. I promise." Ethan didn't remember how he left the Tesseract, only that he awoke to the faint hum of machines and the sterile light of a medical chamber. He was weak, weightless, but alive. A voice greeted him. "Welcome back, Captain Cole." He turned his head slowly. Through the glass, he saw a vast structure, an orbital station, larger than any city he'd ever known, spinning majestically above a blue-green world. It wasn't Earth. It was something new. Humanity had survived. Humanity had endured. And standing at his bedside was a woman with familiar eyes. "Dad," she whispered. Lena, grown, strong, tears streaming down her cheeks. Ethan reached for her hand, his voice breaking. I kept my promise. Time passed. Ethan recovered slowly, his body scarred but his spirit unbroken. He learned the truth. Decades had gone by since he entered the black hole. The Dauntless had never returned. But his sacrifice had not been in vain. His recordings, his data, his love, somehow they had reached Lena, and she had carried them forward, guiding humanity to this new world. She had become the scientist he always knew she would be, the leader he had hoped she could be. And now, together, they stood on the balcony of the station, staring down at the thriving planet below. Do you think they'll remember us? Lena asked softly. Ethan smiled faintly. They won't need to. Every step they take on that soil, every starship they launch, every child who looks up at the night sky, they'll carry us with them. He looked at her, his heart full. The universe isn't empty, Lena. It's filled with us. The stars stretched endlessly before them, no longer unreachable, no longer distant fires in a void. They were maps, waiting to be traced, promises, waiting to be fulfilled. And Ethan Cole, a man who had left Earth with nothing but love in his heart, had given humanity a future among them. Because in the end, it wasn't science alone that saved them. It wasn't power or strength or even survival instinct. It was love. Love that bent time, crossed galaxies, and lit the path through the darkest night. And so, as the station drifted above their new world, father and daughter stood together. Proof that even in the vast silence of space, love will always find its way home.